U.S. and the World, a clear news briefing for April 23, 2026. Across the world today, the United States is not just reacting to events. It is shaping trade flows, security decisions, energy markets, and diplomatic negotiations. This briefing looks at the biggest international stories connected to America right now, and why they matter beyond Washington. We start in the Persian Gulf, where the Strait of Hormuz has become the most urgent global flashpoint. The waterway is narrow, but its importance is enormous. In normal times, a major share of the world's traded oil passes through this route. When traffic there slows, insurance costs rise, shipping plans change, oil prices move, and consumers far away from the Middle East can feel the impact at gas pumps and grocery stores. The Associated Press reported today that President Donald Trump said he ordered the U.S. military to respond with deadly force against Iranian small boats that deploy mines and threaten traffic near the Strait of Hormuz. AP also reported that more than 30 ships have come under attack in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman since the February 28 start of the war involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. The story is not only military. It is economic. Energy markets depend on trust that tankers can move safely. Governments in Europe and Asia depend on Gulf energy. Importers and exporters depend on predictable shipping. And for the United States, the crisis tests a difficult balance, deterring Iranian pressure, keeping global energy routes open, avoiding uncontrolled escalation, and managing the domestic impact of higher fuel and goods prices. That brings us to the global economy. The International Monetary Fund released its April World Economic Outlook under the title, Global Economy in the Shadow of War. The IMF projects global growth of 3.1% in 2026 and 3.2% in 2027, assuming the Middle East conflict stays limited in duration and scope. It also expects global headline inflation to rise modestly in 2026 before easing again in 2027. Those numbers sound technical, but the message is simple: the world economy is still growing, but it is doing so under pressure. War risk, oil prices, tariffs, tighter financial conditions, and uncertainty around supply chains all make planning harder. The United States still has major strengths, including deep capital markets, energy production, technology investment, and consumer demand. But America is also exposed to the same global shocks it helps manage. Trade is the next major story. The White House announced new Section 232 tariffs on patented pharmaceutical products and ingredients. According to the April 2 fact sheet, the policy includes a 100% tariff on patented pharmaceutical products and ingredients, with different treatment for trade deal countries, generic medicines, biosimilars, and certain specialty drugs. The stated goal is to strengthen national security and bring more medical supply chains into the United States. On the same day, the White House also announced changes to tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper imports. The fact sheet says many core metal products will face a 50% tariff on their full value, while certain derivative articles face lower rates. The administration argues this protects American industrial capacity. Critics and trading partners often worry such measures raise costs, strain alliances, and invite retaliation. Both things can be true at once. Tariffs can push investment toward domestic production, and they can also make global trade more tense. The U.S. Trade Representative released the 2026 National Trade Estimate Report, which details foreign trade barriers facing U.S. exports. The report is part of a wider policy that seeks more reciprocal terms with trading partners. In practice, that means Washington is using tariffs, investigations, and trade deals as tools of foreign policy, not just economic policy. The North American relationship shows how complicated that can become. The Associated Press reported that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Washington does not get to dictate the terms of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement as the agreement heads toward a review in July. The USMCA connects factories, farms, energy systems, and workers across the continent. A car, a food product, or an industrial machine may cross borders more than once before it reaches a customer. So when U.S. tariff policy changes, Canada and Mexico do not see it as a distant issue. They see it as a direct challenge to the rules that keep North America integrated. The politics are sensitive because the three countries also share security concerns, migration pressures, and the responsibility of hosting the 2026 World Cup. That means trade arguments can spill into diplomacy, public opinion, and even the atmosphere around a global sporting event meant to highlight regional cooperation. Now to the Indo-Pacific. Taiwan said it signed 6 arms procurement agreements with the United States worth about $6.6 billion, according to Anadolu agency reporting that cited Focus Taiwan. The agreements include rocket systems and self-propelled howitzers. Taiwan views these purchases as part of its deterrence strategy. China views U.S. arms sales to Taiwan as a threat to its sovereignty claims. Washington sees Taiwan as a critical partner in a region where military balance, semiconductor supply chains, and sea lanes all matter. The Taiwan story is bigger than weapons. It is about technology, shipping, alliances, and the question of whether the Indo-Pacific remains stable. The United States has to reassure partners without triggering a crisis. Taiwan has to strengthen defense while keeping its economy open. China continues to test pressure points. And global companies watch carefully because disruptions around Taiwan would affect chips, electronics, shipping, and financial markets. In Europe, Ukraine is trying to revive momentum in US-led efforts to end Russia's war. The Associated Press reported that Ukraine is pushing for face-to-face talks between President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Kyiv's top diplomat described a possible summit as a way to inject new movement into negotiations after more than 4 years of war. But diplomacy is happening while violence continues. That is the central difficulty. Any negotiation has to address territory, security guarantees, sanctions, reconstruction, and accountability. The United States remains one of the few powers that can pressure, coordinate, fund, and mediate at the same time. Yet its leverage depends on unity with European allies, Ukraine's military position, and Russia's calculation of the costs of continuing the war. Put together, today's stories show a changing American role in the world. In the Gulf, the United States is a military actor trying to keep energy routes open. In trade, it is using tariffs to reshape supply chains. In North America, it is negotiating with neighbors who are partners but not passive followers. In the Indo-Pacific, it is backing Taiwan while trying to avoid a wider confrontation with China. And in Europe, it is pushing diplomacy while the war in Ukraine remains unresolved. The key thing to watch next is whether these separate stories begin to connect. Higher oil prices can complicate inflation. Inflation can affect interest rates. Tariffs can change alliances. Alliance strain can affect security commitments. And security commitments can shape trade and investment decisions. In 2026, foreign policy and the economy are not separate lanes. They are the same road, with traffic moving fast. For now, the world is watching 5 markers: whether the Strait of Hormuz becomes safer or more dangerous, whether U.S. tariffs bring new deals or new retaliation, how Canada and Mexico approach the USMCA review, whether Ukraine and Russia move toward direct leadership talks, and whether Taiwan's new U.S. arms agreements increase deterrence or tension. That is the state of America and the world today: powerful, pressured, connected, and still uncertain.